Okay. So welcome to the regular meeting of the Park and Recreation Commission, meeting on June 22nd, 2022. The time is 6:02, and I would like to invite Craig Verame to call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Cabrales.
Here.
Chair Emerson.
Here.
Commissioner Gutierrez. Okay. Commissioner Lawman
Here.
and Commissioner Machado. Commissioner Reisinger and Commissioner Sandoval.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So then I'll invite Craig to explain how the public can participate in this evening's agenda.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Viewers are welcome to provide public comment online through Zoom or by telephone. If you're watching this meeting through Zoom, please select the participants button and select raise hand if you wish to speak. If you're participating by telephone and wish to speak, please press *9. When it is your turn to speak, you will be notified by the host inviting you to participate. You need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Once you're unmuted, you will have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Thank you. Okay, are there any amendments to this evening's agenda?
There are not.
None, seeing none. Okay, then let's go ahead to the first item, which is to approve the regular meeting minutes of May 19th, 2022. Are there any questions about the minutes from that prior meeting? Are there any public comments about the minutes from that prior meeting? Okay. Seeing none, I think we can close public comment, and I would request a motion and a second to approve the minutes of May 19th, 2022, please.
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Can we have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Chair Emerson. Okay, and then Craig, do you want to give a roll call to approve the minutes?
I will. So Commissioner Cabrales
Yes.
and Chair Emerson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawman
Yes.
and Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
Okay, I think we can move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is introductions, awards, recognitions, and presentations. Catherine, you want to take this from here?
Yeah, sure. So before we get into the main event of the evening, I did want to introduce Craig Verame, our new Assistant Library and Recreation Director. So Craig has been with us, I think, is this week 3 or 4, something like that?
I think we're on week 4 at this point.
In week 4, and he joins us from the city of Berkeley. We're really excited to have him. I don't know, Craig, I'll let you say a few words.
Well, I'll keep it brief, but thanks for the introduction, Catherine. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to work with all of you and excited to be working for the city of San Rafael. I spent 9 years with Berkeley in Parks, Recreation, Waterfront. And so I'll be the Assistant Library and Recreation Director for Recreation and Childcare. So I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about in the coming months and years with everything that's on the work schedule.
So he will be a permanent fixture of these meetings moving forward. Okay, with that, I want to jump right into the presentation on the Park and Recreation Master Plan update. We have kind of been winding down the community engagement portion of the master planning process. I know I've been kind of giving you all updates each month as we've been moving through, but now we've got Barbara Lundberg and Lauren Ivy Thomas from RHAA, who are our primary consultants on this project. And I'm going to turn it over to them to lead the presentation.
Catherine, before you do that, on the agenda, there's public comment regarding items not on the agenda. Do we need to call for that?
Sure. We can do that now.
Okay, I'm just curious, are there any public that have comments for items that are not on the agenda this evening? Craig, do you see any public comment in the chat or otherwise? Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I think we can proceed.
Hold on 1 minute. I'm getting some emails saying that the Zoom is not working. 1 second.
Oh.
And I do actually see one hand did just go up. So we'll pause for just a second here.
It's interesting. I think, all right, all right, well, we'll let this person comment.
Okay, so Rose, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk here. And you will have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Something is off with my service here and I can't see myself, but that's okay. I'm just talking to the phone in my carport. The service is screwy. I'm probably less than a mile from McGinnis Park. So we're surrounded by hills here, so the service can get spotty. Anyway, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm an advocate, a retired public school teacher, and an advocate for our community, which is a community around Smith Ranch across the way. It's quite a few people live here, but it's not Marinwood. It's not that side of the highway. So, and we do have a wonderful resource in McGinnis Park, which, you know, is nice, but to me, it offers so many opportunities that are not being realized. And the opportunity that I'm interested in is some sort of community building around inclusiveness, inclusion, and music. And you might think, well, this is a park. People don't go to a park to hear music. Well, I want to share with you a quick anecdote. Yesterday, just yesterday, I met someone, a friend of mine, to walk the Lagoon Park, you know, Marin Civic Center. And just nearby was an amazing young gentleman playing congas to his young daughter. And this guy was really great, but he was just set up his drums. You know, he parked in that, what's that driveway that leads up to what used to be the box office, which is not open because of COVID still. Anyway, he was, and he didn't speak much English at all, but nevertheless, I thought here's an opportunity for someone if we had even a mild band show, you know, like they have in Dunphy Park in Sausalito. And I've been a resident of Marin now for 16 years. I hail from San Francisco and I'm very happy here. I love our parks, but I feel they're kind of, I don't know, they're devoid of humanity and humanness. You might think, well, people go to parks to listen to the birds and see the animals and tree bathe. Well, you know, I really think the parks offer a real opportunity for community building. And that's why I'm here. And that's where and I've been going back and forth with Catherine, who seems to be open to some of these suggestions. It always does come down to funding, programs, how much is unreasonable, how much would constitute a good start. So that's what I want to offer to you folks. And I'm sorry about the Zoom, you know, I can see 4 people, 4 commissioners and Catherine. So.
Great. Thank you, Rose. Thank you for the comments. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment during the open comment time about items that are not on tonight's agenda? None, Craig?
None.
Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the main event for tonight.
Okay, with that, then I will get back to turning it over to Lauren Ivy Thomas and Barbara Lundberg from RHAA.
Okay, well, we're very happy to be here. We've reached a milestone on this project, and I'm going to let Lauren continue on with the presentation.
Hi, good evening. I've met some of you before, so some of you are maybe familiar with parts of this presentation. Hopefully it's providing a lot of additional information for your future references. So let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see my PDF? No? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, all right. Well, this is our first Parks and Recreation Commission meeting for this master plan, but we have been in the trenches working hard on this master plan project since January 2022. So almost 6 months working closely with the city. In this presentation, I'm gonna briefly introduce the project team because I know that some of you have not met us before, the scope of the project, where we're at right now, and then next steps. So tonight, just like I said, I'll introduce our team, a brief overview of what the master plan process is. These items 3 and 4 are where we are at right now, currently in the inventory and community outreach, wrapping up those phases, and then getting into the next steps of our presentation. Catherine, would you like, I guess I'll defer to you. So commissioners, if you have questions as I go along, you can feel free to ask unless there's a preference to save them for the end. I'm fine with either one.
We typically have them hold till the end. That's just kind of modeling how city council does it.
Okay, great. Well, then we'll hold those questions until the end. Okay, so as I've said, we've been working on this project since January of this year, so almost six months of work. And to briefly introduce you to our team and who all is involved as this is firstly the city of San Rafael. Secondly, it's the community. We really feel like the community is going to inform the final policies, programs, and recommendations for the master plan. You can see here that this is quite a large consultant team. Barbara and I represent RHA Landscape Architects and Planning. But we have quite a few sub-consultants who are helping us in a variety of professional realms as we do this master plan. We have statistically valid survey providers, recreation planners, financial planners, and an accessibility specialist for this master plan, as well as cost estimating and architectural assessments. And so you can see that this is quite a broad master plan that's touching on a lot of aspects of the city's parks and recreation system. The main project goals for this master plan are firstly to assess the existing system and previous planning, understand community needs, and then finally understand funding and resources to implement the identified recommendations that will come out of this master plan. It's important to note that this master plan is essentially a 10-year long-range planning document that will help us direct funds to identified recommendations. So out of this master plan, when it's completed, hopefully in February 2023, there won't be any construction documents, but we will have a solid list of recommendations that the city will move forward with. So it's creating a long-range planning strategy for the city's parks and recreation system. We start with an inventory and assessment of existing conditions. I'll talk to you this evening about where we're at in this, looking at the city's previously planned documents, looking at demographics and projections of community growth. Also inventorying your existing conditions physically. We traveled all the city's parks and recreation facilities through January and February of this year, documenting conditions. We've also done an extensive amount of community surveying. Tonight's presentation will go greatly over those community surveying results. We did both a statistically valid survey as well as a community questionnaire. We also have a steering committee, which I believe some of you are on, we have met with sequentially throughout the master plan process to check in about our goals and deliverables. And of course, the community outreach element takes into account our stakeholders, representatives of specific recreation interest groups, community workshops, our city council, and then of course, this Park and Recreation Commission is part of our community outreach portion. The next phase of that is going into our needs assessment. This is really where we are right now. We've examined the supply, we've examined the demand, and now we're going to attempt to fill that gap with recommendations of what we can see being improved in the city of San Rafael. And this essentially results in the final master plan, which is our master plan of recommendations, prioritizations, and an action plan for those improvements that will come out of this needs assessment. This is about a 14th-month process. We began in January 2022, and we're hoping to conclude with council approval in February 2023. So we're about nearly halfway through the master plan project. A lot of the brunt of the work has taken place in terms of the inventory and the community outreach. And now it's really time to digest that information and create solid recommendations for the city's park and recreation network. So this is where we are right now. I presented a lot of this information to the steering committee at our second steering committee meeting last month. And I also brought this to, I believe it was the child care division of the Recreation Department a couple weeks ago. So firstly, the document review. We're nearly done with our document review. The most important guiding document of this is the city's general plan in 2040. Specific recommendations have come out of this general plan, specifically the creation of this Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And the goals and priorities that were developed within this general plan are guiding this Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We want to make sure that we're not building anything entirely new. We want to build on existing planning efforts and work. This is kind of the state of your system. The city has 12 neighborhood parks, 6 pocket parks, 4 recreation facilities, 3 community parks, 3 special use parks, and 2 community gardens. A neighborhood park is a neighborhood serving park, typically has play areas, gathering areas such as picnic tables, and usually a restroom. A pocket park is a much smaller park, more for passive recreation. Usually there's only a seating element, perhaps a shade element. Recreation facilities are the recreation centers that we've assessed in your community. Community parks are much larger serving park spaces. In addition to having the gathering areas and restrooms that a neighborhood park may have, they uniquely have large recreation amenities such as a sports field or stadium that is serving a larger need. The special use parks we have are Boyd Memorial, Falkirk, and Jean and John Starkweather. These are parks that don't fall into a typical category of a pocket park or neighborhood park, but they do serve a valuable recreation purpose for the city. And finally, the 2 community gardens that the city operates. Overall, from our parks inventory, these are the highlights of what we've assessed thus far in your system. The majority of your parks were constructed in the mid-20th century, so they're about 60 to 70 years old, which is very typical of Bay Area development following post-World War II development and urban initiatives, very common. Something that is uncommon or less common that I professionally have not experienced is working with a city in California that has parks that are over several decades old. So in the city of San Rafael specifically, there are 3 parks, Crystal Park, Boyd Memorial Park, and why am I blanking on the third right now? The Falkirk Cultural Center grounds that have actually been gifted to the city over the past decades, and the city has absorbed them into their park and recreation supply rather than the other way around, rather than a development-driven creation of parks and open space. This is an amazing amenity for the community, but there are some pretty serious maintenance challenges that may come with a city managing facilities of this age. We've also noted that there has been really good and solid strategic planning and development that has happened in the city related to parks and recreation from about the 1990s to present. Our high-level initial needs coming from our inventory and assessment of the parks and recreation parks specifically is that there's quite a need for updated playground amenities per code and accessibility. Overall, the playgrounds are in good condition, but they can be definitely updated for accessibility and for safety and for just bringing them up to current standards for play. Additionally, renovated sports courts are a huge need that we are seeing both in the inventory as well as in the community survey results. The city is actually managing several sport courts that are currently closed to the public. So providing recommendations to bring these up to being usable is a priority of this master plan. Additionally, we've noted a need for improved signage, both for wayfinding, for safety, but just having a more solid, concise visual network of what is the city park system. And then finally, a plethora of infrastructure repairs and replacement. As I stated previously, a lot of the city parks are 60 to 70 years old, and all parks have inherent life cycles. A playground has a life cycle, picnic tables have life cycles, and a great majority of your parks are experiencing the end of those life cycles for a variety of amenities, including fountains, picnic tables, play structures, even walkways and pathways. Regarding the facilities inventory, so that's our parks assessment, kind of think outdoor open space amenities. We've also conducted a facilities assessment of your actual recreation centers. Very unique to this community, which I also have not experienced professionally, is that each recreation center is completely different from the other. There is a large range of age, construction type, and even the recreation that's provided in the city's recreation facilities, which is an amazing source for the community, but it creates different needs for maintenance and upkeep. We have noted, just like in the parks and recreation open spaces, that strategic and continuous enhancement and renovation has been guided towards these parks, towards these recreation facilities. Many of the common issues that we've seen are water intrusion, aging of mechanical equipment, outdated electrical distribution, the need for door and window replacements, a need to repair movable partitions, updating painting and finishes, and replacing wood deck replacements. A lot of these recommendations will come from making these recreation facilities more usable and more efficient to better meet the demand for servicing the community and recreation programming. We've also, we're in the early phases of our draft CASP assessment. Certified Access Specialist Steve Hall, he's an architect in San Rafael. He has visited all of the city's parks and open spaces. The accessibility component of the recreation facilities is incorporated in that element. So the CASP is more focused on outdoor access space. So pretty much anything that's outside of a recreation facility. So looking at restrooms, pathways, access points into the parks and open spaces. He's identified initial early major accessibility needs at Beach Park, the Freitas Park Annex, Jerry Russell Memorial Park. This asterisk is here. I forgot to mention it earlier, but we have actually been in discussion with the city of reclassifying Jerry Russell Memorial Park into an open space rather than a neighborhood park. So that is likely a recommendation that will also come out of this master plan. And then Oliver Hartzell Park, which is a pocket park. There's minor accessibility needs at these following parks. And then minor accessibility means just bringing up to code. And then there's even lighter need at these following parks with minor accessibility needs with maintenance improvements, meaning that with improved maintenance activity, we can bring these facilities, these spaces up to accessibility. So things ranging from trash obstruction or replacing decomposed granite with a more trackable surface is kind of the maintenance level of accessibility improvements. We've also conducted a recreation assessment. Ken Ballard with Ballard King, he will actually be visiting the city mid-month next month to meet with recreation staff. He has looked at the city's operation practices for recreational programming. He's also looked at the departmental structure. And these are the main things that he's identified from an operational standpoint, a recreational operation standpoint for the city. As I noted earlier, all these things kind of tie together. Aging facilities will impact the provision of recreation services. And we've noted that aging facilities with limited space, parking, sports fields, and joint use agreements are not serving the recreational demand of the community currently. There is limited growth in program and long-range program planning. So creating a more systemized recreational operations may benefit the city. The deferred maintenance that I previously mentioned does negatively impact program provision. For example, the sports fields at Pickleweed Park that require just typical turf care are closed about 6 months a year, and that negatively impacts the provision of services in that space. There's also a limited asset management system and asset management planning within the city's recreational department. Some cities have adopted asset management systems and long-range tracking systems to track life cycles of specific amenities such as playgrounds or restrooms, and that may be a consideration of this master plan to also implement. And then, of course, very similar to what a lot of us are seeing beyond parks is just limited staffing and funding is impacting the provision of recreation services. The community outreach the brunt of our community outreach has been concluded at this phase. We will continue to promote materials from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan through the city's website, and we will have one more community meeting on, I believe it's September 9th, as well as additional council and commission meetings. But in terms of surveying and doing that first community workshop, this master plan has achieved that. So I'll first start with kind of a brief summary of our, not a brief summary, it's actually quite detailed, a summary of our surveying efforts. So for this master plan, we have taken on a twofold approach to surveying, which is very typical of cities of this size, and often the results of a statistically valid survey as well as our questionnaire, they really support each other and really further affirm the recommendations that come out of this master plan. So from March 7th to March 10th, the city contracted with Godby Research and a statistically valid survey was provided. It collected 575 responses, 559 of those in English and 16 in Spanish. The intention of the statistically valid survey is to target specific San Rafael community residents that live in the city of San Rafael and represent the overall demographic percentages of the community. And what's interesting about this type of survey is that it does not stop until it has reached all those demographic benchmarks. The questionnaire, Parks and Recreation Questionnaire, is a supplement to the survey in that anyone can opt in regardless of their residential status. We ran a Parks and Recreation Questionnaire from March 30th to May 31st. We've collected 1,131 responses, about 1,000 in English, 84 in Spanish, and 1 in Vietnamese. The statistically valid survey was only offered in English and Spanish, while the Parks and Recreation Questionnaire was offered in both English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. The emerging themes in comparing both of these survey results, as well as looking at input from our community meetings, I'm going to walk through these emerging themes that we've seen that are kind of, they're really going to shape the recommendations that come out of this master plan. The first theme is that overall, the community is satisfied with the city's existing supply of and access to parks and recreation facilities and programs. However, there are quite a few community members who are not aware of the city's programmatic offerings. So when it comes to programs such as courses or any kind of extracurricular activities, roughly 30% of community members are not aware of those. We've seen a strong desire to update and improve the city's existing park amenities, particularly in modernizing playgrounds, recreation amenities such as benches, picnic tables, as well as repairing failing infrastructure. We have seen a slight interest in new amenities and new facilities, but there's an overwhelming interest of community members to improve what already exists in the city. We've also seen a strong desire for improved maintenance and cleanliness throughout the city parks. As somebody who toured the city parks for quite a few days and has worked very closely with the city for the last several months, I'm happy to say that safety was not a major concern that came up in a lot of the surveyed responses. We did see some safety concerns, particularly at Boyd Memorial Park in our open-ended responses, but overall community members are feeling safe. They would just like the spaces to be a little bit cleaner and a little bit more regularly maintained. We've noted that the community is incredibly interested in pedestrian access throughout the city's recreation network. Walking is a major priority for community members when it comes to recreation. And then finally, we've seen that when it comes to programmatic offerings, the community is interested in city provided recreational programs for sure, but those programs are really may best be oriented towards self-directed activities. People like to have the opportunity to do what they want in the places that they want to do them. So those are the high level emerging themes that we've seen, those 5 bullet points. And now I'm going to delve into a slightly more detailed comparison of what we've seen from the statistically valid survey as well as from the community questionnaire. So that first point of the city of San Rafael being generally satisfied with the city's parks and recreation facilities. In the Godby research, there was 73% satisfied. That combines very satisfied and somewhat satisfied. For the questionnaire respondents, we had a slightly lower rate of satisfaction at 55%, combining very satisfied and satisfied. This is very common for this type of survey. For a Godby survey, individuals had no planned intention to participate in the survey. It's completely randomized, while those who took the questionnaire opted in. So those who opt in might have already interests or intentions that relate to parks and recreation services. So it's kind of like a different mindset that you're going into the survey, because you know that you want to see improvements at Pickleweed, or you know that you want to see enhanced program like Bristol, versus somebody who was called while they're at home making dinner and they're like, yeah, I do like the city parks. So that kind of accounts for the variance. Regarding the city's recreation programs, again, we see that kind of same variance. 56% of the Godby survey are satisfied, 46 in our questionnaire. What's really interesting though is that roughly 30% of respondents to both surveys were unaware of the city's recreation offerings. So how the city decides to proceed in advertising those offerings may be a recommendation of this master plan. Nextly, an important question that we wanted to ask community members is, what do they think of the quality of the parks that they have in the parks and recreation facilities? This is important because it starts to give us a perspective, a lens of how the community is seeing these amenities. And with positive results, the community members are generally seeing the quality of the parks and recreation facilities as good or excellent. The most frequented parks and recreation facilities include, on the park side, Bristol Park, hands down one of the most popular parks in the city and one of the most frequently visited parks in the city, followed by Sun Valley, Terra Linda, Peacock Gap Park, and Albert Park. I do want to say that I know that you guys are looking at these top 5 bullets. That does not take out other parks that are very popular that we know of, such as Pickleweed Park or why am I blanking right now? But this goes to say that these are the top ones, and this helps us in our recommendations, in that if we know that there's an improvement that we could do at Bristol Park, then that improvement may help the greatest amount of people, because we know it's such a popular park. The most, in this order, I'm listing all the recreation facilities. The most important recreation facility visited, hands down, is the Terra Linda Community Center and Pool House. This is a very well-loved park and community center, particularly for the pool uses. After that is the San Rafael Community Center. Following that, it's none. It's no community centers. And then following that is the Albert J. Boer Community Center, followed by the Falkirk Cultural Center grounds and Cultural Center. So kind of big takeaways from understanding those frequented parks and recreation facilities is we'd like to know where people are going and what they're doing there. Next, we asked about what are how people are moving to these parks and recreation facilities. This is important to understand demand as well as to understand needs for parking. And driving is by far and away, like I think it's about 89% of survey respondents who are driving to the parks. That's followed by walking and then cycling. This is the first city that I have worked in professionally where cycling is a major mode of transportation to city parks. So I think this is a great sign that residents are feeling safe enough to ride their bikes throughout the community. But there's probably some ways that we can continue to enhance pedestrian-oriented transportation methods. The most important park improvements reported in combining the 2 survey results is improved cleanliness and maintenance. Residents really want to see just more regular maintenance at shorter intervals that will help improve cleanliness. Next is an interest in addressing or replacing outdated recreation equipment. That includes picnic tables, benches, playgrounds, restrooms, water fountains, which we previously talked about. Making infrastructure improvements. This is important for efficiency. So infrastructure improvements include addressing outdated irrigation lines, outdated irrigation systems, or repairing pavement where there's cracked pavement to allow for accessibility and just ease of access. Interestingly, the least important park improvement reported is technology. This community is not super invested in seeing technology incorporated into parks. The way that could show technology in parks is, illuminated billboards, Wi-Fi in parks. Those things are not a priority for the community. We also surveyed respondents about the most important recreation amenities. These are things in parks that people are using. The highest ranking one, far and away, even slightly above the other ones, is trails and pathways. Community members are really using the city's trails and pathways to move around. And this is kind of supporting the idea that enhancing the overall pedestrian network in the community would not only benefit the city of San Rafael, but the city of San Rafael's park and recreation network. Following the amenity of trails and pathways is playgrounds, restrooms, swimming pools, sports courts, and finally picnic areas. When it comes to activities, what people want to be doing, not just the amenities that they want to have, again, we see walking, hiking, and jogging as a first tier of recreational interest for community members. A second tier is swimming, fitness, and cycling. And a third tier, which I think is really quite unique to San Rafael being such a coastal community, is water sports. I have not seen this also in a professional setting to have so much interest in water sports. And this is an excellent opportunity for the city to consider recreational interfaces with the Bay. And then, of course, in that third tier is soccer, which remains very popular. Least important activities reported were lacrosse, futsal, and football. Regarding recreation programs and services that the city provides or can provide, the most important are community events. Community events, we have heard this repeatedly in community meetings, through our stakeholder interviews, and through the survey, that individuals are really excited to gather and have opportunities to mix with one another in kind of like a safe and organized way. Interestingly, things that we've heard about community events and the drive to have community events is the opportunities to mix different demographics together. So that could be different families mixing together, different income backgrounds mixing together, different age group mixing together. Having these community events allows that interfacing opportunity, and that is a clear priority from a lot of the community member respondents. Following community events, we have strong interest in youth sports, nature and environmental programming, self-directed activities, as I previously mentioned, child care services. Games, whether in person or online, are not a priority as a recreation provision for the city of San Rafael. And then kind of further supporting the information regarding repairing and replacing existing amenities and facilities, we've seen that the community highly values improving existing amenities over adding new ones. There's definitely an interest in seeing new amenities or features of new amenities, but the community seems to really value replacing what is already there or enhancing what is already there. We asked a question regarding COVID to see if we could kind of find any key information about how COVID has impacted the provision of parks and recreation services. And I would say that the results are pretty mixed. 40% are saying that they're using the community parks and recreation services the same as in COVID. And I think what we can pull away from this is that community members are going to either keep using the facilities as they are, or they're going to use them more. And that's important to note. So the demand for using recreation facilities and amenities is going to stay where it is, or it's going to increase, likely increase. And so part of this master plan needs to plan for that. Additional programming and recreation facility requested. A lot of this information comes from our open-ended response, as well as some input from the community meetings, and is that repeated interest in infrastructure repairs, providing classes that are educational, community-oriented events such as concerts, community events, additional walking and jogging paths, activities for children and or enhanced playgrounds, more frequent pool programming. That's one thing that we've heard. Arts and art programs in the parks, pickleball, enhancing community gardens or adding community gardens, skate parks, spaces for dogs. I call this spaces for dogs because I can't say that I've seen a clear interest in having a dog park, but I have seen some clear interest in not wanting dogs in certain parks. And so that's something that I think this master plan will need to kind of assess about how we can separate those uses. And then of course, improvements to and more programming at the Terra Linda Park and Community Center, specifically with the aquatic programming. We've held 4 community workshops. These 4 community workshops held very, very similar information, but it was provided in kind of different contexts. And in alignment with the city, we decided to have this kind of like one package workshop 4 times in 4 different venues. So the first community workshop was on March 30th at the San Rafael Community Center. We had about 30 community members, a lot of them from the Sun Valley and Bristol neighborhoods. We presented what the master plan is, kind of where we are currently in the master planning system. And it was just that initial opportunity for the community to provide their interests in what they want to see in the Parks and Recreation system. On April 28th, we also held an in-person community meeting at Terra Linda Community Center. We only had 3 community members at this meeting, but our survey has had an excellent amount of Terra Linda community residents. So we feel pretty confident that maybe they didn't need to go to that community meeting because so many of them had completed the survey. On May 5th, we did an online presentation, which was about, I think, 8 to 10 individuals. And then on May 11th, our most well-visited community meeting event was at the Albert J. Borough Community Center, which had about 50 to 60 individuals. Unlike the previous community meetings that I mentioned, the Albert J. Borough Community meeting was held in Spanish, and rather than having it be a kind of a presentation style workshop, we had a station-based workshop. So we worked closely with Voces del Canal and the Canal Alliance to understand how materials could best be absorbed by this neighborhood and presented in a way that was more approachable and educational. And so at this community meeting, we had different stations for the different information regarding the master plan, and it was very well attended. Okay, so I guess we could, if you guys have any questions on the materials presented, we could do that, or I can also delve into next steps.
Do any of the commissioners have a question so far for Lauren?
I have a couple questions. Thank you,
Yes.
Stacy, for facilitating. My first question is, I'm curious that there was nothing about expanding parks. You know, I know that I get where we're at with our parks and our need to improve our infrastructure and maintain the parks that we have, but I'm just wondering, I'm concerned that nobody actually wanted to expand the parks. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that. And then my second question is, in terms of like, will the master plan have recommendations about what the staffing is needed to maintain and keep our parks safe and well maintained and all of that? So like, is there any assessment of the amount of staff devoted to parks that might help us influence future directions of our parks being well maintained and safe? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Emerson. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Cabrales, did you want to add on to that before I?
I had a different question, so I'll just wait until you address that one. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Excellent questions. We are absolutely considering the potential for expanded park systems. In fact, we know that there are several neighborhoods in the general plan that have been recommended to see where an expanded park system could happen. So that's in the Canal, Dominican, and I know I'm blanking on another third one right now. But we do know that there are neighborhoods and districts in the city of San Rafael that could benefit from enhanced expanded park services. That you're already touching on is going into our next phase of the master plan, which is recommendations. This inventory phase and the community surveying phase is really about gaining information. And once we've had that information, which we have, 98% of the information now, that'll go into the recommendations. And we are very well aware, thank you for mentioning that, there are parts of the city that can benefit from expanded services. And we do plan to incorporate those recommendations that have been previously stated, within the last 20 years into this master plan. So absolutely, Chair Emerson. The next question regarding staffing for maintenance operations. Yes, Ken Ballard is working with the city's Library and Recreation Department to talk about operations and operations management, and that will become a recommendation for this master plan. And we can always be flexible or expand or minimize our scope on how that information is provided. So if we get direction from the Recreation Director, Catherine, that we need to know how many people should be staffed for this, we can definitely develop those standards for you for the city of San Rafael.
Commissioner Cavallo, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. So I noticed that well, I noticed this because Bret Hart is my neighborhood park, and I noticed that it was categorized as a pocket park. And I was wondering, is that Arbor Park is the pocket park that's sort of like right on the side of the road there, that's kind of like a patch of grass? Is that correct? Am I identifying that park correctly?
You are absolutely correct. And you have found a presentation error that is not actually categorized. Bret Hart is not categorized as a pocket park in our master plan. So I apologize for that.
Okay.
Catching that.
Great.
Bret Hart is very
Okay,
much
good.
a
Because I was
neighborhood
thinking, gosh, those two parks just aren't what I know to be in the same category, but I just wanted to check that.
And Commissioner Cabrales, I think you touched on something that Lauren kind of got to, and she was saying the plan will be likely recommending that Jerry Russell Memorial Park be reclassified as open space. I think there's a few, and that might just, the Bret Hart one might be an error of this slide, but there are a few parks in here where the classifications just don't quite make sense in where they are. And that's something that Lauren and RHAA have flagged, that we might need to relook at some of those classifications.
Great, thank you. And then I guess the two-parter to that was as I was thinking about, I was like, does it matter? So that's actually my second part of this question is, does it matter how they're classified? Will the recommendations get more or less weight based on if it's a neighborhood park or a pocket park in the master plan?
That's an excellent question. I really appreciate how you framed that of does it matter? Yes, it does matter. And it matters in that typically the larger parks are the more community serving. And so we want to get the most bang for your buck. If we put a bunch of investment in Arbor Park, how many people are really visiting Arbor Park versus Peacock Gap Park or Albert Park or Pickleweed Park? So that is where it does make a difference for us on the planning end. Yeah, I think that.
Okay.
There was
Great.
going to be a second element. I don't think there is.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gutierrez, you have a question?
Yeah, hi. I had a question as to, like, you talked about how the statistically valid survey specifically targets certain demographics. Does this master plan as a whole address how the community is growing over time or changing over time, I
Yes.
should say? Okay.
Yes, it does. So one of our major resources that we've been referring to is ABAG, Associated Bay Area Governments, which is heavily referenced in your city's general plan. And so we do understand, I could be totally wrong, but I believe off the top of my head, for the next 20 years, the city is expecting about a 10,000 population growth. And that growth may be directed towards the downtown area. And so that information, that knowledge of understanding where people may be, where there is opportunity to have infill housing, will absolutely go into this master plan, because these recommendations kind of, as I said, related to, a pocket park versus a community park, we want to put recommendations where there are going to be people using them, where they're applicable to growing demand. So yes, we're definitely considering the population growths and changes for the community.
Thank you. And sorry if I missed it at the beginning. I was late.
Commissioner Emerson, do you have another question?
I have more like an offer of collaboration because I work for the public health department for the county of Marin. And I do think that it would be good to cross-reference census tracts with priorities in terms of obesity versus whatever health outcomes, in terms of what the priorities are.
Right.
Because I don't you know, if we're investing in a community that actually doesn't need our investment, maybe that doesn't make sense. So I'd be happy to reach out to you and, you know, get you to reach out to our epidemiology team to see about those kind of health outcomes in terms of, you know, long-term health problems and what census tracts they affect. And then the second piece is that I do think that the beach park deserves a second, like a different consideration. There's been considerable investment since I've been on this commission, and there's a stage there and all of that. It's not just a pocket park. It really is an opportunity. And I really think it needs to be prioritized moving forward. I'm not on the master plan, but as a citizen of San Rafael and the chair of the commission, I really think we need to have it's not really a pocket park. It's a different animal at this point. So that's just my 2 cents for what it's worth. But yeah, I'd be happy to connect with you about connecting to our epidemiology team, just in terms of like what kind of data could really inform these decisions, because really there's communities that do need more recreational activities than others from an equity perspective. And I'd like to have that conversation with whoever is willing to have it.
Very much agree with both of your comments. Collaboration is excellent. I've actually had such a great experience collaborating with the city. We've actually had the opportunity to collaborate with former planning commissioner Paul Johnson. He actually really helped us in terms of defining our open space definitions. So any information, Chair Emerson, that you have regarding public health would be, I would love to see some of that information, especially if it's quantifiable within, you know, a region.
I think the hard part is that like there's the county, like the canal is within the county, and then there's the city.
Right.
And so that's the challenging part.
Okay.
You know, in terms of the jurisdiction.
Right.
Even though, of course, the city is invested in the canal. So anyways.
Well, but yeah, that would be great. I would definitely, me and Barbara would definitely be open to having a conversation about the city's public health side and how that relates to this Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And then your statement about Beach Park, we certainly agree. One thing that was made very clear at the beginning of this master planning project, in fact, I think it was by the city managers, he was talking about how, sorry, any city resources that are available to the public should be available to the public. So right now we do know that there are sports courts that are not available to the public that the city is still managing. We know that there's Beach Park, which is an amazing canal front property that is not available to the public. And so bringing these spaces up for public use is absolutely a priority. We know that there's a need, and we know that there are underutilized amenities that can help meet that need.
Are there any other comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Sandoval.
Yeah, I have I guess it's a higher level question. Just when it comes to like the ultimate recommendations that will be made, can you expand on like how might the questionnaire change or like inform the results of our statistically valid survey? Because I know this survey itself is much smaller, but so I just want to know the interplay there and how that works.
Right. Well, I feel like you kind of had 2 questions. So one question was the interplay of the 2 surveys, and then the second question was how they inform the recommendations, right? Okay. Well, we've already put together both of the surveys to compare results, and we've seen alignment across the board on, you know, who took the survey. We've seen that from the districts, X amount of percentage, they're actually really aligning from what we've seen from the Parks and Recreation Questionnaire. We have not seen any major divergences in opinions and thought from survey respondents between these two survey formats. So if anything, we're really seeing that each of the surveys are actually supporting the other survey. What has been proven to be valid in the statistically valid survey, we are seeing those same findings in quite a huge way in our questionnaire. So, I mean, Catherine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't seen any conflicting information between the 2 survey formats. And so, yeah, I think that we feel pretty confident where we at as a consultant that we're moving in the right direction because the surveys are reflecting one another.
Great. Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what I was, that's what I was wondering. So thank you.
Okay, okay, great.
I have one other question, Lauren, and that is about the connection between some of the parks and the open space areas. Is that something that you're looking at?
At kind of a peripherally, we met with, Catherine and I met with Paul Jensen about 2 weeks ago to talk about kind of the scope of open spaces versus the city-owned parks.
Mhm.
Determined for this park master plan is that we will only move forward with city-owned parks. But we do know that an open space master plan is recommended in the general plan 2040, and this master plan will certainly support recommending that in the future. But when we kind of came down to the nuts and bolts of it, they're very differently maintained, they're very differently programmed, and they're also very differently used. And so in order to give the city a solid resource for how to maintain this one set of parks, the city's city-owned parks and recreation facilities, we felt like we could just make the best package by keeping it to city parks, but then recommending that an open space assessment do happen.
Okay, thank you. The reason why I was asking, because I know that they're slightly different and obviously very differently managed, but maybe if there was wayfinding to announce an introduction or entrance to those places, then people would have, because there's so much interest in walking and hiking, that there,
Right.
you know, we could better identify the entrances to the open spaces that are accessible through Boyd Park, through maybe Sun Valley Park, certainly through Costa Park. And at least make wayfinding more obvious. And then my other question was about the Falkirk Cultural Center grounds. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to be a special use park in that context? And the reason why I'm asking is because that is so centrally located, but it doesn't feel to me like a place that I feel welcome to hang out in. And so is it intended to be that kind of space, or is it intended to be a different kind of space?
I don't know if I could speak to the intention of how the Falkirk cultural grounds, I guess, was designed to be used when it was absorbed into the, into the city's resources. It is publicly accessible, especially the botanical gardens. Anybody can use those at any time. So when it comes to the grounds, I guess physically what we've inventoried was the front lawn property, the kind of sculptural gardens, the pond area, the gathering area, the botanical gardens. And then we did look at the more privately programmed kind of venue spaces of the garden, like the wedding venue and gathering spaces. We did look at that. It may be, and Commissioner Laumann, maybe perhaps a recommendation that comes from this is making the grounds more publicly accessible or more advertised as a publicly accessible place to go, because I do agree with you right now that it's not currently advertised as it is compared to like other parks. But I do think the classification of it, as kind of Catherine mentioned, is unique, right? Because it's a grounds versus a park. It's, it's a property that was donated to the city that has evolved in a very, very unique way.
Thank you. I'd love to see, an invitation to people to walk there, or make it feel a little bit more visible as a place to stroll. Thank you. Are there any other comments from the commission? Okay.
Lauren,
I just have one last comment. It's just that in terms of connecting with the bicycle and peds plan and transportation, like, is there complete streets and like looking at a more holistic recommendation beyond just park and rec in terms of what the city is going to do to support recreational activities and safety moving forward?
Yes, yes, all the recommendations as they relate to the connection between parks and recreation spaces for the bike and ped master plans will be incorporated into this master plan as well. And so that's really kind of noting where those circulation routes occur and how they can be enhanced or improved as they relate to the recreation spaces that they're near.
Lauren, are you done? Did you have one more slide, or because then we'll need to go to public comment?
Okay, yes, thank you, Catherine. Just the next steps that we were talking about. This is what we are currently as consultants in. We've looked at the supply, we've heard the demand, and right now we're really parsing through previously planned efforts to kind of meet that gap, build on previously stated recommendations of what amenities can be, and then also creating recommendations that are relevant to this master plan, and how we think we can create a strategy moving forward to see recommendations implemented through the master plan. And so the next steps are we're working on that this summer, and for the September 9th community workshop meeting, we'll hopefully have kind of presented a draft set of recommendations to the community, and then that will go to the council and the Parks and Recreation Commission, as well as the community has not officially seen the survey results. So I believe that will also be folded into that September 9th community meeting, kind of like a overview of all the community outreach we've done, and then a draft list of recommendations that will be vetted through the fall, and then hopefully make it into the master plan for February.
Thank you. Is that your full presentation, Lauren?
It is.
Okay, thank you. So now I think we have an opportunity to open for public comment. If there are people in the public, Craig, do you want to?
Yeah, I think some people may have joined during the presentation, so I'm just going to remind everyone that if you're watching this meeting through Zoom, please select the participants button and select raise hand if you wish to speak. If you're participating by telephone and wish to speak, please press *9. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be notified by the host inviting you to participate. You need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Once you are unmuted, you'll have 3 minutes to provide your comments. So I think I noticed in the participants section, we have a couple hands raised. I'm going to start with Norma Fergoso. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk now.
Unmute. I just unmuted. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I've been very interested in this parks survey, and I know a lot of work has gone into it. I was particularly caught by the statement that generally most of the community felt very safe throughout the city's park systems, which is wonderful. I believe that it is generally true. However, the community meeting I attended at the Canal community at the Alboro Community Center, so there we have a park and a community center, which is one of these big bang communities for the city of San Rafael. And what I heard from that community is that they had very serious concerns about safety, about being able to safely walk down the street to appreciate their parks because of the lack of lighting. And then, there's also other activities that are undesirable, shall we say, in that region. And I just was concerned that I didn't see any mention of specifics for the Canal community, because I know that they did a lot of work to provide surveys and bring in the community. Your speaker said it was one of the highest participatory groups, 56, 60 people attending, and lighting and safety and trash is such a serious concern for them that I was a bit surprised that it wasn't at least mentioned as a small line item of lighting under infrastructure. And another speaker spoke of equity issues, and I would really hope that you could take this to heart. There was a presentation to the town council made by the Canal community about the concerns in their community around lighting and parks improvements. I hope you will seek that out, and thank you for your time and your efforts. I know your heart is in the right place. Thank you. Good night.
A follow-up question to you about that, Norma or Lauren. I'd be curious to know if the information that folks provided at that meeting felt like the pathways to and from the parks were prohibitive, or with the park environments themselves also feeling unsafe?
So I can speak to this a little bit because there's actually a parallel project going on between the city, mainly led by Public Works and the police department, specifically looking at some of these the security concerns that Norma mentioned, which definitely she's spot on there. And I think that is something we need to be more careful about in our messaging moving forward, that yes, generally folks feel safe, but there are legitimate concerns. And so there's been a large effort between the city and the Canal Alliance and Fosses del Canal and Dominican University to do a study of all of the areas in the canal where folks feel that improved or additional lighting could be beneficial. And that's the park is definitely one of those areas, both kind of within and going to, and then there's a number of other streets and areas throughout the canal. And so I did actually just hear at last night's city council meeting that PG&E, I believe, or DC Electric, some contractor has kind of the lowest hanging fruit was just increasing the wattage or making the lights that were there brighter. So they've gone through and done that. And there's a number of other kind of steps that the city's working towards kind of tackling the easiest first and doing, kind of prioritizing that. So that's a big project that's kind of running parallel to this one. The Pickleweed Park enhancement project that primarily we've really focused on the turf. But there's a whole lot of other amenities that we've included in that for grant funding, one of which being improved lighting and security cameras around the park. So hopefully that answers the question, and definitely want to reflect what Norma said, that we did hear a lot of that from that outreach. And I do believe that the plan will kind of have park by park. This is a citywide plan. So here we really rolled it all up to just kind of no specifics whatsoever. But the plan will have some park by park specific recommendations, I believe, Lauren.
Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. Norma, you're absolutely correct. We did hear some of those safety concerns. I did want to give a general big picture kind of snapshot of the whole city. But the master plan will differ into park by park specific recommendations, which are, they vary from one another.
All right, we're still in public comments. So Craig, are there other people in the public that would like to speak?
Yes, I'm going to invite Matt Sampson to speak, and I'm going to allow you to talk right now.
Okay, good evening, commissioners, staff, and consultants. I just want to say a big thank you very much for continuing this effort forward. It's obviously a big deal for the residents, so we appreciate it, and also appreciate the new assistant library director's ability to leverage technology, if I understand how much time I have left too. It's quite the system you have. One of the things I was really excited to hear tonight is the connectivity between parks, specifically for pedestrian and bicycle use. That's a big deal, and although the community is very pedestrian and bike friendly, there's still not defined routes specifically in between parks, and any effort to do that would be greatly appreciated. And then lastly, from now until September, if there's the ability for the public to comment or inform the recommendation process that's going to be coming out in September, a way to do that would also be appreciated. Understanding it's not a wish list of everything, but bigger picture items to concentrate on based on the priorities from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak?
I do have one. I have been emailing with someone who was having something was going on with our link. They weren't able to get in, and I said they could email me their comments and I would read it. So I will do that right now. And this is from Vicky Fernandez from the West End Neighborhood Association. She wanted to say two things. One, that we are lucky to have open space here and would love to have some money to help with trail construction and maintenance. They'd love to hook the newest area up by trail to existing open space. They would also love a parklet for residents who are unable to hike. There's a property on Marquard that could be considered for an open area with some benches and maybe a picnic table for those nearby. It's going through a review for building plans which are problematic. This could be an opportunity for the owner to donate to the city or sell at below market price for a tax write-off.
Thank you.
And it looks like we actually maybe do have another.
You do. It looks like Lauren, you raised your hand.
Yes. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, I want to really, as with Matt, he really gave a good thank you to you all, and I want to make sure and do the same. And I was happy to see the progress made since the last meeting that I attended as well. And I agree, it would be wonderful to have kind of a comment period that we can dive into some of the details. One general development that I've seen that I almost hope gets separated out is a little bit of an urgency list. And recently, my wife and I, we live in Terra Linda, and we have our lunch oftentimes at the Terra Linda Park, right at the community center. And unfortunately, we observed a young man who was playing basketball, and he did actually what I was fearing, which is twist his ankle on the uneven pavement underneath the basketball hoops. And, you know, he shrugged it off as best he can, but he's definitely going to be injured for a little while. And it just, those type of incidents, I think are really important for low-hanging fruit, that we really separate those out and look at surfaces in general and try and really improve some of the safety concerns for the kids running around and doing different things. So that's all I wanted to kind of bring out. I did miss some of tonight's presentation, so you might already have maybe done this, but I wanted to say that. So
Thank you, Lauren. Are there any other members of the public?
I believe that's all. I think everyone who's here has spoken.
I wanted to kind of reply to Lauren's comment a little bit regarding the urgency list. And I should mention that in developing our recommendations, one of the priority factors that is always included in master planning is safety. And safety and code compliance are typically prioritized above everything else. So we will work closely with the city to kind of develop a prioritization list that does heavily weight safety so that community members can use parks and facilities safely.
And I did also just see it in the comments, Commissioner Cabral has asked about security cameras kind of falling under that technology heading, because I believe Lauren shared that technology is not generally a priority for our residents. But I think, again, this is an area where what we've heard directly from the neighborhood and the canal community is that they would like to see more security cameras at that park to deter some of the more illicit behavior that happens there.
Thank you. Yeah, that was interesting to me because I hadn't ever thought of safety cameras as a technology option. When I saw that question myself, I didn't think, oh, that's one of the things that could come under that heading. So I do think that's an interesting addition to that category. Also, sorry, I was thinking, and this is very broad here, so I don't even know if I have a point about it, but I know that we were talking about open space and how we've sort of separated that from this plan. And I know earlier we had talked about not needing a dog park or maybe needing a place for dogs. And I'm wondering, has there been thoughts about combining the need for dog areas with the open space opportunities, and in that way not dividing it completely from our plan, but incorporating some of the open space as areas to have dogs, because currently I know that in terms of walking a dog, there's very few places where you can be off leash walking, which I know is something that is a lot of people want to be able to do. And it's different from dog parks. It kind of combines that walking thing that everybody's talking about being super important. and the dog thing. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there as a way to sort of combine multiple areas.
Yeah, one thing I'll just jump in on that. So I know Lauren mentioned kind of an open space plan, and really what we have in the general plan 2040 is kind of two separate recommendations, one for an open space management plan and then one for a trails master plan. And the trails master plan, we have actually included in the Measure A allocations, and that's going to be folded into the bike and pedestrian master plan update. And I believe that's where we would probably look at things like rules on the trail. And I'm not familiar enough with kind of off leash versus on leash.
There's only one place. Yeah. I mean, that's the deal is.
Well, and just more like the theory behind it and the
Mhm.
problems that might come from allowing off leash. I know that there's strong proponents of both. I worked for the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy when the Golden Gate National Recreation Area was trying to redo their on leash versus off leash dog areas, and that was.
I know that was a disaster. His friends is somebody that was working on that as well, and that was awful. Yeah, I know. I know that. Yeah.
So I
Anyway.
know it brings out folks strongly on both sides, but I think that would be addressed more through the trails plan versus this recreation plan or this park and recreation plan.
I just thought it might be a way to address the need for the acreage of a dog park, but perhaps in a trail walking way that would, what I'm thinking of is sort of the Mill Valley dog park that they have as a part of their park, but it's kind of a trail that goes out to the point. And so you can walk your dog on a trail off leash or have the dog park, and it kind of takes that open space and creates a more usable area, sort of a multi-purpose area. That's it.
Yeah, I will say our open spaces in terms of the level of development is not high. It's a lot of user trails, not a lot of parking amenity. It just, the amenities are pretty rustic. And it sounds like for something like that to work well and to be a real attraction for dog, kind of that dog park / trail would probably want a little bit more. We would need to look at improving the amenities. Which isn't to say it can't be a goal.
Are there any other comments from the public? No. Okay, so let's close public comment time. Are there any other issues that we would like staff to respond? I think we've kind of done that within the context of the conversation this evening.
And so this was just a presentation to gather feedback and input. So no action is required from the commission on this one.
Well, then thank you very much, Lauren, for your presentation. Thank you, Barbara. We really appreciate your work on this, and we look forward to the next steps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Are we the last agenda item? So I guess, no. Okay. So Barbara will head out.
Unless
Thank
you
you
want
very
to
much.
stick around for our
Thank
Public
you.
Art Review Board committee selection.
I mean, I kind of do, but as you guys saw, or the one night the cleaner comes here, me and Barbara had to stay late here. So I don't want to disturb you guys with vacuuming noises.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Okay, I think that we can move on to item 4 of our agenda, which is selection of one commissioner to serve as a public representative or a commission representative on the Public Art Review Board.
All right, so I'm going to be doing this one. I have a quick little PowerPoint to bring up. All right. So I think I've mentioned in previous meetings that The city has been in the process of evaluating kind of our public art review process. So in 2021, the city had a couple of requests from community groups wanting to do murals. And the only process that the city had for approving that was a pretty onerous, rather expensive, time-consuming both for the applicant and for staff process that went through like environmental review, design review board, planning commission, all of those things. And the city council really wanting to support these types of projects and wanting to encourage more public art, directed staff to develop a more tailored process for reviewing public art proposals. So the city worked with these two community groups. There was one from the Terra Linda Social Justice Group, which kind of grew out of the Black Lives Matter movement. And if some of you remember, there was a kind of chalk mural in honor of Breonna Taylor. And so that was one group that was looking to do a more permanent kind of mural looking at some of those issues. And then there was another group from the Canal looking to do a mural on a county building there, actually. And so the city staff worked with those two groups to kind of develop a pilot review process. And we took those lessons learned from that process. We also reached out to other agencies that had already developed public art programs to develop our public art review program. And this was reviewed and approved by council on May 16th. So the public art review program that we're starting to get up and running has kind of three components. One is the public art review board, one is the public art review process, and then another is a public art selection criteria. A lot of public art. So the public art review board is kind of the main, I'm going to talk through all three, although the public art review board is kind of the main reason that I'm bringing this to you tonight. So the purpose of the board is to help administer the public art review process and to advise city council on public art installations. The board will have 5 members, one of which is a liaison to the design review board, and one is a liaison to the Park and Rec Commission. There are also going to be 3 at-large members, which we're currently in the process of recruiting for. And those folks will be looking for members that have relevant professional qualifications in the arts. And then on a project-by-project basis, the board will also include a non-voting liaison from city council. So depending on where the proposed project is located, the council member who represents that district will also participate kind of in the review process. The plan is for the board to meet quarterly. However, the board can call ad hoc meetings. We've had a lot of kind of art stakeholders share with us that there's often grant deadlines and that, you know, there's a benefit to being flexible. And so this is really, we're viewing, this isn't a pilot because it's a permanent board at this point, but we are going to be reviewing how this works and adapting as we move forward and kind of iterating and learning from the experience. So at the moment, it's going to be quarterly meetings with the ability to call ad hoc meetings as necessary. And it's going to be really interesting to see how many of these proposals come forward and what the demand really is for this process. And so the Public Art Review Board is going to be kind of the key spoke in this public art review process. So this slide gives the flow chart of the review process. It starts with the project applications being submitted to Craig and myself, who are going to be the staff liaisons to this board. They must submit their proposals at least 8 weeks prior to the scheduled meeting, which will give staff time to review the proposals, to make sure they're complete, to provide the applicant with any like initial feedback where areas where we might be seeing that they might not be eligible or there might be gaps, to also work with any relevant departments, mainly looking at issues of like safety or other more technical, you know, maintenance concerns, things like that. Then the All of the relevant information will be compiled and presented to the board. And so then this is where it kind of splits. So for short-term projects, which are 1 year or less, the board will have decision-making on authority on whether or not the project is approved. For longer-term projects that are greater than 1 year, the board will issue a recommendation on whether or not they think it should be approved. If the project is at Borough Community Center or Pickleweed Park, it will also go through the Pickleweed Advisory Committee for their recommendation. And then ultimately, all long-term projects will be considered by City Council. One point to note is that even for long-term projects, we are not accepting artworks in perpetuity. So there's going to be a timeline established for review of all submitted works. I forgot to mention that we worked with the Cultural Planning Group, which is a consulting firm that specializes in public art, these types of programs, and they really strongly recommended that we take this approach. Particularly because the city is not going to be providing funding for these projects, it was important to note that the city isn't the owner of the projects. And that this also gives the city a little bit more flexibility if, if there's kind of controversy, or if a piece of art kind of doesn't age well, or if they just want to go in a different direction 15 years from now. This kind of gives them that opportunity to revisit. And of course, they can always decide to extend and to keep the piece of artwork longer, but it just raises that question and gives that opportunity to revisit that. So the program also established selection criteria. So we're not just going to throw the board out there and say, hey, make any decision you want. As a public agency, we have to have established criteria that the public can understand and that applicants can see how their proposals are going to be reviewed. And that's really kind of as unbiased as we can get it. And so the primary criteria that the board will be using focus on logistical elements, such as the ability for the project team to implement the proposed project. It's not always easy to do a large mural, so we want to make sure that the folks bringing this really understand what that all entails. Their ability to fund the project. As I mentioned, the city does not currently have funding for these types of projects, so that will be a requirement of any proposed projects. We're also asking the applicants to do a certain level of community outreach, kind of depending on the size and scope of the project, prior to bringing it to the Public Art Review Board. The maintenance requirements are going to be part of what the board's looking at, as well as how well the design takes into consideration issues of safety, the needs of the site, as well as how well the proposed project reflects the diversity of San Rafael. There are a few selection criteria that address the content of the artwork, but those are really limited to prohibiting artwork that portrays themes that may be interpreted as derogatory towards race, religion, sexual orientation, natural origin, or physical or mental disability. It prohibits artwork that contains content that could be construed as advertising, as religious or sexual in nature, or as promoting a political candidate, or that includes political text. As well as any content that's considered obscene or indecent will also be prohibited. So we're bringing this to you tonight to select a representative from the Park and Recreation Commission to serve as liaison to the Public Art Review Board. This liaison will serve a 2-year term to, typically we have 1-year appointments like typically advisory board for chair. But this, it was felt because of kind of the nature of this board, it was important to have a little more continuity. And the board will only meet quarterly. And of course, if there's no project to review, then it won't even meet that frequently. And then this representative would also be responsible for kind of reporting back to this commission on what projects are being considered and kind of the workings of the Public Art Review Board. So I guess with that, I'll open it for questions. Oh no, we still have quorum. Okay.
Are there any questions?
I guess I just want to ask our commissioners, since we're a small group now, who's interested in being on the Public Art Commission? Okay.
I'm actually interested. I was gonna put my name in the hat, but I know I'm on other stuff. So if anyone else is interested, I'm happy to let them do this.
My commission term is ending, so I don't think I'm the right person. And then we don't have a few commissioners here tonight, but
Yeah, I know Commissioner Gutierrez has asked to step back as the liaison to the Pickleweed Advisory Committee, so I'm assuming I know she's volunteered to be president of the Sun Valley PTA. So I believe she's looking to reduce her evening meetings. And I don't know if Commissioner Machado did not mention anything. I know he was on the pilot process.
Well, I would recommend Commissioner Sandoval if there's nobody else that is interested. And for the, if that's where we're at.
all right, should we open to public comment? That's what I have on the,
They all left.
I
They all
think we
left.
lost
Okay.
everyone from the public.
okay, well, then we'll close public comment. And then, Cicely, did you want to make a motion to nominate Commissioner Sandoval?
Yes. I motion
So you-
that Commissioner Sandoval becomes the public art representative.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay. So Craig, do you want to call a vote of our little group?
I can. Commissioner Cabrales,
Yes.
Chair Emerson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
Great, motion passes. Congratulations. Okay.
I should have mentioned that I painted a mural when I was in middle school at my middle school. So pretty excited about this. I think it's cool.
No,
Great, you're the man for the job then.
Full circle.
I actually think it's really cool though, just Catherine, like the county doesn't have anything like this and we've had to like kind of piece it together. So it's a good policy thing to think about, you know.
That's great.
Yeah, we're excited to see how it goes.
Yeah.
So moving on, commission reports and comments. Are there any comments, conferences, seminars, anything that people want to report back on?
I think just we're excited that the fair is happening. It's a big recreational opportunity and it has not been open in a few years, so. Get
I love
out
that
and
there's
have
free
fun.
transportation as well.
What?
Free transportation.
Right. Yes, so please come out to the fair and I'm sure the social media of the city will be promoting the Marin County Fair because it's a great fair for everyone. So I'm excited in the midst of this latest surge. It's a little crazy, but you know, gotta move forward.
Any other reports? Okay,
And still no one from the public here.
okay, thank you. So we move on to staff comments then.
Sure. Well, I think the big news on, I know the big news for us was the passage of Measure A. So that was super exciting and I think makes all of our work over the coming years a lot more interesting since we will actually have a funding source to implement our Park and Recreation Master Plan. But we got that news and that allocation, we not in time to bring it to this meeting. So I believe we're going to shoot to bring the work plan to you all at the July meeting. It just kind of as a little preview, we did approve a work plan last year. And the allocation that they had estimated for us didn't account for the fact that the measure was going to expire partway through the year. So we actually got a significantly lower allocation last year than we had budgeted for. Similarly, this coming year, we have the collections for Measure A don't start till October. So it's again, kind of 2 years of lower than typically predicted allocations in a row. At the same time, some of the projects that we included on the work plan last year are coming in over the estimated budget for, reasons I think everybody has heard about. So in all likelihood, what we will be bringing to you is a work plan that just kind of reallocates money from the already established priorities to be kind of more realistic, which I think is okay timing anyway, since we don't, what we had said is we're going to wait and see what the master plan recommends. So this kind of buys us that a little bit more time. And I also think actually the preliminary results that we're seeing do support the activities that we have on the plan already. So that's kind of good, but our plan is to bring that to you all in July. As I mentioned, this is kind of the July preview. We will be also asking for a liaison and an alternate to the Pickleweed Advisory Committee as Commissioner Gutierrez is needing to step back from that role. And then I did want to provide an update. I know I sent you all kind of an email sharing with you that this past Saturday we had a community outreach meeting at Sun Valley Park that had originally been envisioned just to focus on the playground replacement project and to get feedback from the community on what playground structures they want to see and just to get feedback on that. And, unfortunately, there was an incident regarding someone experiencing homelessness who was in the park and having a difficult time and kind of accosted a child. The police responded, they were there within 3 to 4 minutes, but the community understandably was very upset and worried. There was quite a lot of misinformation going around on Nextdoor. So we were really lucky to be able to work with the police department. The patrol lieutenant came out so the way we worked really closely with Jim Rubin, the Sun Valley Neighborhood Association president, and he really got the word out that the first 90 minutes were going to be focused on the playground, and the last 30 minutes, Mayor Kay and Lieutenant Behringer came to speak to the security and the incident. And that worked really well. I think people were really appreciative of it. Both the mayor and Lieutenant Behringer did a great job of really speaking to the concerns and also kind of ensuring that kind of also being able to speak to both the limitations and what the city could do to support and how the neighborhood could be a partner in this and kind of more and and help the city respond to this, because the police department doesn't have enough staff to post an officer at every park all 24 hours a day. So I think in the end we got to a really great place. We got some really good feedback about the park, the playground project, and some things we need to consider moving forward. Our hope is to bring that to you in July as well, especially since we're trying to stay dark in August. We're going to be scheduling a meeting with our consultants soon to see if we can get that turned around quickly enough to bring it to you all at the July meeting. But I'll send out an email to everyone just to make sure that we're going to have quorum in July, because it's an action-packed agenda. And then I'm going to turn it over to Craig to do kind of more of an operational update.
Yeah, so just wanted to share a couple things. I think the big news for us with recreation and childcare is that we kicked off our summer program season. We have quite a few programs running throughout the community. As of right now, about 70% of our summer recreation programs have filled to capacity, and about 84% of those users who signed up for those programs are San Rafael residents, which I think is just really great to see that so many San Rafael residents are taking part in all the great programs that we're offering. We're continuing to offer a scholarship program. So we've given out at this point around 13 youth scholarships. We have some more scholarship applications that were pending that are processing, and we do still have additional funds available to provide more scholarships. So that's just a general reminder that if you know anyone in the community who might qualify for that scholarship or is interested in opportunities, looking for funding, we do still have funding available to participate. Our childcare centers are offering kids camps programs again this season. So those kicked off. Those are offered 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. each day at each of our centers. Those include a lot of fun special events and field trips. I was talking with Kelly Albrecht, who supervises those programs, and really excited to bring those field trips back this season. Aquatics, summer season kicked off last week. On Friday, the 17th, we offered an all-staff training at Hamilton Pool. The group swim lessons kicked off on Monday. The junior lifeguard camp and Camp TL are back in full swing at Terra Linda. And I'm not sure if you happened to catch the local news last night on KPIX5, our San Rafael Aquatics team. Some of them were featured on the local news. They were talking about how to stay cool in the heat that happened yesterday, and also talking a little bit about ways that we're working to recruit lifeguards and swim instructors. So our team has done a great job, and just wanted to give them a shout out for all the work that they've been doing to make sure we have really well-qualified, well-trained and certified lifeguards in our community. I think they're offering 5 additional lifeguard certification courses over the course of this summer. Over at Elbert J. Burrow Community Center, a lot of summer programs just started in the past few weeks. The Canal Mini Soccer League, the Volley Start Summer Camp Program, the Canal Arts Program, the YMCA Summer Camp Program, as well as the Saturday San Rafael Basketball Academy and the Junior Giants Program. I know the Junior Giants is a really fun program, free for ages 5 through 13 of all skill levels, really focus on baseball, softball skills, but they also have a real strong emphasis in education, health, and bullying prevention. So I know that Steve Mason, he's out on a well-deserved vacation right now, but he mentioned to me that if I could just pass along, they're always looking for volunteers. So if you know anyone who's looking for opportunities to get involved over there, there's great opportunities with that Junior Giants program. Community gardens are still very active. Canal Community Garden, 87 of 92 plots are being utilized. 5 of those are on hold right now for any requests for raised bed mobility issues. 8 people on the wait list. And then over at Terra Linda Garden, 70 of the 71 plots being utilized, 1 on a hold for ADA accessibility in case it's needed. And then it was 67 on the waiting list over there. And then last thing I wanted to share is there's a new exhibit coming up at Falkirk Cultural Center, a new art exhibit by Kendall C. King. That exhibit's going to run June 24th through July 29th with an opening reception this Friday from 5 to 8 p.m. There's also a call for artists for a juried exhibition by Susan Press. The theme for that's going to be Art to Amuse and Delight. That exhibition is going to run August 12th through September 23rd. And there's information up on the website for how to submit to that exhibition.
And just to follow up on a couple of things that Craig said, I did want to, since I know it's been about a year since this commission kind of reviewed and gave guidance on the scholarship program. And I did want to just thank Chair Emerson for her suggestion to allow for self-attestation for income. We have had that be appropriate in a couple of cases, and it was really nice that we had that ready to go and pre-approved by the city attorney. So I did want to really thank you for that suggestion. That was something that's really come in handy. And then I did also just want to share that, so Kendall C. King, the art exhibit at Falkirk, he was a local artist who passed during COVID, and his wife kind of approached us wanting to do an exhibit. And he was a longtime art professor at College of Marin, has been very, active in the Marin art community for a long time. And when she showed us his kind of portfolio of work, it was just amazing, and just a lot of diversity of work. And I do believe that the opening reception is going to be a joint kind of memorial opening reception honoring his life. So I didn't know who he was, and I thought you all might be interested to hear a little bit more background on him. So I think that's it. Any questions on the staff report?
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate, Craig, that you are jumping right in with that programs report. There's a lot of information there, so thank you.
I'm going to do the best I can to provide that. No guarantees for the future. I know as I continue to have more and more on my plate, I'm going to do the best I can to bring you content and updates.
We're very happy to have you. Welcome to the team. Okay. Any public comment? No public comment. Anything further? Okay, well then I think that concludes the meeting of June 22nd, and our next meeting is on July 21st.
All right, well, I'll be reaching out to confirm that we're gonna have quorum that day, since it's gonna be a meaty agenda.
Fantastic. Thank you, Catherine.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good night. Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you. Pleasure. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I just want to make